I still remember the sharp sting of winter wind slicing through the holes in my worn-out shoes. The soles had started peeling, and every step soaked in the cold like a sponge. That night, I stood waiting at the corner of 6th and Monroe Avenue, where the last bus to the industrial side usually stopped. Streetlights flickered overhead, and the sky wore the kind of darkness that pressed heavy on your shoulders. She stood a few feet away from me, arms folded, visibly shivering. No coat, no gloves. Her cheeks were flushed red, not from embarrassment, but from the cold's merciless slap. I didn't know her name. She wasn't talking, just staring at the ground, teeth chattering, lips quivering like they were trying to form a prayer, but had forgotten how. I took off my jacket without thinking. It was stupid, maybe. That jacket was the only decent piece of winter gear I owned. But I'd always been taught that people come before possessions. My mom drilled that into us with every meal she made, sometimes from nothing but leftovers and rice. Be a person who gives, even when it's hard, she used to say. So I stepped forward and offered the jacket. You look like you need this more than I do, I said, holding it out. She hesitated. Are you sure? I nodded. I insist. She put it on slowly, like someone unwrapping a fragile gift. Then she turned toward me and said, Thank you, really. And just like that, the bus came. She got on. I stayed behind, letting the next one come along. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have guessed, is that this woman wasn't just another commuter. She was Evelyn Carter, CEO of Helix Venture Partners. And 3 days later, my life would change forever. But before I take you there, let me rewind. I was born and raised in a place nobody really talks about unless a factory shuts down or a river floods. Baymore, Michigan, population barely touching 15,000. An industrial skeleton of a once booming town, it's where steel met rust, and dreams often corroded before they ever had the chance to shine. My dad fixed vending machines. Not glamorous, not prestigious, but he was proud of what he did. Machines don't lie, he'd say. They either work or they don't. And I know how to make 'em work. He had thick hands from years of wrenching coils and unscrewing stubborn panels, and he passed those hands on to me, not in shape, but in habit. The habit of fixing things. My mom was the real engine of our home. She worked nights as a janitor at Baymore General Hospital, and yet every morning she was there at the kitchen counter, flipping eggs or kneading dough for parathas. She had a way of turning whatever little we had into something that felt enough. We weren't broke, but we lived paycheck to paycheck. Sometimes one bad week meant skipping meat for dinner. Sometimes it meant the electricity got cut off for a day or two. But we never complained. Complaining, my parents believed, didn't fix problems. Action did. I learned early how to earn my keep. My first job was delivering newspapers at age 12. Then I moved on to washing cars, bussing tables, packing groceries, whatever I could find. But I had one thing that set me apart, even back then, a fascination with computers. It started when our school library got a single donated desktop. Most kids used it to play solitaire or print out homework. I opened up the command prompt and typed random lines just to see what would happen. I didn't know it was called coding. I just knew it made me feel powerful in a world where I often felt small. We couldn't afford a computer at home, so I used the libraries for 30-minute sessions. When they cut my time, I offered to help reshelve books just to get an extra hour. I read online forums, watched YouTube tutorials, and taught myself basic HTML, then JavaScript, and later Python. In high school, I built my first website, a fan page for a local wrestling league. It had 47 unique visitors in 1 week, and I was thrilled. That same year, I started offering to build websites for local mechanics, barbershops, and grocery stores for $20 a pop. I didn't make much, but I was building something. And that feeling of taking nothing and creating something people could actually use became addictive. After graduation, college wasn't an option. My SAT scores were solid, but the tuition numbers weren't. So I enrolled in online certifications, worked night shifts at a warehouse, and kept coding. The warehouse job was brutal. Long hours, loud machinery, and back pain that made sleep feel like a luxury. But I kept telling myself, this is temporary. I had dreams of starting something, my own software, my own app, my own business. But no one teaches you how to start a company when you grow up around people who only know how to survive. I made mistakes. A lot of them. I once launched a tutoring app for high school students. It bombed, 0 downloads in a month. I tried building a dropshipping site. It crashed when I couldn't handle logistics. I burned through all my savings and took out a small loan I could barely repay. Each failure hurt like a punch to the gut. But I kept standing up, because somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered what my mom used to say. If you're still breathing, you're not done yet. And then, that winter night happened. The week before I met Evelyn, I had just been rejected from my 3rd accelerator program. They said my pitch wasn't scalable, that my product had no unique value proposition. I didn't even know what that meant until I Googled it later. All I knew was, I needed a win, even a small one. I had $42 in my account. Rent was due in 10 days. My laptop screen was cracked and my internet connection had been shut off. So I walked down to the bus stop that night to catch a ride to the nearest coffee shop with Wi-Fi. I planned to sit there until they kicked me out, applying for freelance gigs and fixing broken bits of my old code. And then I saw her, standing there, trembling. It wasn't the kind of moment you expect to mean something. It felt ordinary, one of those moments you forget by morning. But for some reason it stuck. Her eyes, her silence, her quiet dignity. She didn't look rich. She didn't look like someone who made million-dollar deals or ran an empire. She looked tired, cold, human. And that's the thing about real success stories. They never start with fireworks. They start with ordinary people making quiet decisions, like giving up their only coat. 3 days later, I got a call. Unknown number? I almost didn't answer it. Mr. Malik? The voice said. Yes? This is Evelyn Carter. You gave me your coat at the bus stop. I paused, confused. Oh, right. Are you okay? I am. I just wanted to thank you, and I also wanted to ask, what do you do? I hesitated. Well, I guess I'm trying to build a software startup. There was a long pause. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow? She said. And that was the moment everything changed. When someone like Evelyn Carter asks you to meet for coffee, you don't just show up, you show up early. I was there 25 minutes ahead of schedule, wearing my only ironed shirt, the same one I'd worn to job interviews. I didn't even touch my coffee. My hands were too shaky to hold the cup without spilling it. Then she walked in, different from that night at the bus stop, poised, sharp, powerful, wearing a charcoal wool coat and carrying a leather laptop bag. She moved like someone used to rooms stopping when she entered, but when she saw me, she smiled softly, almost humbly. I like punctual people, she said, sitting across from me. Habit from shift work, I said nervously. Warehouse taught. Me time doesn't wait, she chuckled. Good answer. Then she got serious. She placed her phone on the table, flipped open a notepad, and looked me straight in the eyes. I Googled you, she said. There's not much out there. A few broken sites, a Medium blog you haven't updated in years. But I saw code, raw code. You're self-taught? Yes, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am. Makes me feel ancient. Yes, Evelyn. Why did you give me your coat? The question caught me off guard. I fumbled. You looked cold. That's all. And no one else did anything. I nodded. Kindness isn't just about character, Rayhan, she said. It's about pattern recognition. You saw a human problem and acted without overthinking. That's a rare trait, and entrepreneurs who solve problems instinctively tend to do very well. I had no clue what she meant. I just sat there, nodding like I understood. I run a venture firm, she continued. We invest in early-stage tech startups, founders with grit and something different in their DNA. You've got a spark, but raw fire doesn't matter unless it's harnessed. I sat frozen, unsure whether this was a lecture or an invitation. Then she said, "Tell me what you're working on." No elevator pitch, just talk. So I did. I talked about NextMind, a passion project I'd been nurturing for 2 years. It was an AI-based education tool I'd designed for kids who struggled in traditional classrooms. I explained how it would adapt to each student's pace, their style, even their emotional cues, through natural language processing and machine learning. I admitted I had no funding, no business model, no clue how to monetize it. She didn't interrupt once. When I finally stopped, she leaned back, crossed her arms, and said, "That's one of the most brilliant, poorly packaged ideas I've ever heard." Ouch. But then came the twist. "I'll make you a deal," she said. "I'll mentor you, help you refine your product, structure your company, build a pitch deck. I won't invest a dime until you earn it, but I'll give you access to my office, my network, and my time." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, stunned. "Come tomorrow, 9 a.m. Sharp." The next few months were the most humbling of my life. On day 1, she gave me a notepad and told me, "You don't know anything about business, and that's okay, for now." She made me read books I'd never heard of. The Lean Startup, 0 to 1, Crossing the Chasm. She drilled frameworks into my head: value proposition design, go-to-market strategy, customer segmentation, and every time I made a mistake, she let me fall. "Get used to failing fast," she'd say. "The startup world doesn't hand out trophies for effort." I worked 16-hour days out of her office. I built the MVP of NextMind myself. No budget, bare-bones UI, running off a free Firebase instance. I cold emailed over 300 school administrators, teachers, and EdTech bloggers. I got 273 rejections. The 274th replied. It was a small charter school in Ohio. The principal liked the concept. She invited me to demo the platform via Zoom. I prepped like it was a TED Talk, and somehow, I don't know how, it clicked. She signed on for a trial with 20 students. Evelyn made me celebrate that win. Not because it was big, but because it was real. "This is traction," she said. "This is how startups are born, one yes at a time." I started refining the product based on real feedback. One kid struggled with reading comprehension. I built a feature to simplify passages based on grade level. Another hated typing. I added voice input. Slowly, NextMind evolved from a prototype into a real platform. I began sleeping at the office, literally. I'd pull 2 chairs together and curl up with my hoodie as a pillow. Evelyn once found me at 6 a.m., bleary-eyed and coding through a migraine. She didn't scold me. She brought me coffee and said, "Founders don't sleep, but they do scale." After 3 months of traction, she connected me with a small angel investor group. I pitched nervously, hands sweaty, voice cracking. But they liked the data. They liked the honesty. They invested $50,000. I cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes after the meeting. That money wasn't just capital, it was validation, proof that maybe I wasn't crazy after all. With the funding, I hired my first 2 teammates, Nina, a UX designer, and Yusuf, a back-end genius. We were a 3-person army with a single goal: help students learn smarter, but success has a funny way of testing you. As we grew, so did the expectations. Users started reporting bugs, servers crashed, parents got frustrated when they couldn't. Reset passwords. Teachers demanded features we hadn't even thought of yet. I had no idea how to run customer support. I didn't know how to manage a team. And worst of all, I started burning out. I stopped eating right. I missed calls. I snapped at Yusuf over a misplaced semicolon. Evelyn pulled me aside one night and said, "You're starting to implode." "I'm fine," I lied. "You're not. You're confusing busyness with progress. That's how startups die." I wanted to argue, but she was right. I was trying to do everything myself, terrified to delegate, afraid the house of cards would collapse if I let go of even one. She assigned me an executive coach, an old friend of hers, a retired COO named Marcus. Marcus didn't care about my app. He cared about my mental processes. "You're driving with your foot on the gas and brake at the same time," he said. "You'll overheat." He taught me about systems, how to build a culture, how to think long-term without losing short-term urgency. He helped me breathe again. Within 6 months, we went from 20 to 800 student users. We integrated with Zoom, partnered with a textbook company, won a small innovation grant from the state. Investors started calling us. But Evelyn? She stayed calm. Through all of it. "Traction is noise," she said. "Focus on the signal. Are you solving the core problem better every week?" One day she called me into her office. "You've earned this," she said, sliding a term sheet across the table. Helix Venture Partners was offering $1.5 million in seed funding. My hands trembled as I picked it up. "Sign it only if you're ready," she said. "Because this is the start of real accountability." I signed. That night, I walked 5 blocks in the snow to the same bus stop where we'd first met. I stood there silently for a while, watching the buses come and go. Something about it made me feel grounded. From that point on, life accelerated. We moved into a real office, hired 10 more people, scaled the platform to support 20,000 students. But more importantly, I wasn't just building software anymore. I was building a team, a mission, a movement. And none of it would have happened without one cold night, one simple gesture, and one woman who chose to look deeper than most ever would. When the wire transfer for $1.5 million hit our account, I didn't feel like a millionaire. I felt terrified. That kind of money was supposed to feel exhilarating, like the world had finally acknowledged me. But all I could think about was, don't mess this up. It wasn't a lottery win. It was trust. Evelyn's trust. The investors' trust. The trust of thousands of students and parents who now use NextMind every day. And I had just become the man responsible for not letting any of them down. The first thing I did was overhire. Classic mistake. 10 became 20, and 20 became 30. Engineers, designers, account managers, 2 marketing interns I wasn't even sure we needed yet. The burn rate skyrocketed, and we started running out of money within months. "Cut the fat," Evelyn warned me, "and focus on depth, not headcount." But I was too caught up in the high of being called a tech CEO. The magazines started profiling us. NextMind, the startup reinventing education with emotionally intelligent AI. I was invited to podcasts, panel talks, even a local TEDx stage. Meanwhile, in the background, our servers were crashing weekly. Our customer support inbox was flooded. We had a 24% churn rate no one wanted to talk about. Then came the breach. It happened during spring break. One of our junior developers pushed unverified code into production, bypassing QA in a rush to meet a meaningless deadline. A vulnerability opened up, and a third-party bot scraped 13,000 student records before we could stop it. It was our worst-case scenario. Headlines splashed across the internet. AI EdTech, startup exposes student data. I remember Evelyn walking into my office that morning, holding a coffee in one hand and the printed headlines in the other. She didn't yell. She didn't lecture. She just asked, "What's your plan?" My plan? I didn't have one. I was too busy being angry, at the dev, at myself, at the world. But I took a breath. I sat down with our legal team. We drafted a full disclosure statement. We alerted every affected school within 48 hours. I issued a public apology, took responsibility on camera, and launched a free cybersecurity training program for educators. Then I fired the employee responsible. But I also paid for him to take a proper course on secure coding. Why? Because I'd once made worse mistakes with no one around to teach me better. That week was the lowest point of my professional life. But strangely, it was also the turning point. After the breach, something changed inside me. I stopped trying to look like a CEO. I started being one. I met with every department. I asked hard questions. I streamlined priorities. We killed half the features that were bloating the product. I implemented bi-weekly retrospectives. We introduced 24/7 monitoring on all back-end systems. I also changed our hiring process, bringing in people not just for skills, but for alignment with our mission. And then I flew out to every partner school we had. I sat in classrooms, talked to teachers, watched kids use our app. One boy in particular changed everything for me. His name was Elijah, 9 years old, diagnosed with dyslexia. His teacher showed me how NextMind adapted vocabulary to simpler levels in real time, helping Elijah finally read his first full paragraph out loud in class. He didn't know I was the founder. He just gave a thumbs up to the screen and whispered, "Cool app." That single moment hit harder than any headline, funding round, or tech award. We weren't building software. We were building confidence in kids like Elijah. That realization became our North Star. The turnaround wasn't easy. We downsized from 30 to 18 team members, painful but necessary. Our Series A was delayed by 3 months. Some investors pulled back, nervous after the breach, but we survived, and then we began to thrive. By our 3rd year, we had 80,000 active users. We launched new modules, emotion tracking, personalized, daily goals, even gamified milestones that rewarded effort over grades. The feedback loop between our engineering and pedagogy teams became our secret weapon. Evelyn, for the first time, called me a builder, not a coder, not a founder, a builder. We raised our Series A at a $25 million valuation. That number didn't impress me. What impressed me was the number of parents who wrote us daily, saying their children no longer feared school, that teachers were using our platform not to replace learning, but to understand it. Then came EdTech, our first real competitor. They had more funding, flashier branding, partnerships with Fortune 500s, and most dangerously, they had a celebrity founder with a massive social media following. EdTech started eating our market share like termites. They offered schools massive discounts. Their pitch was slick. Why use an app designed by a warehouse worker when you can have Silicon Valley's elite? That quote came from their CMO. She didn't even bother hiding the jab. I wanted to fight fire with fire. Evelyn stopped me. "You're not building a castle," she said. "You're building a lighthouse. Focus on your beam." So we doubled down on community. We introduced scholarships for low-income students. We hosted monthly webinars with educators. We launched Next Labs, a co-creation platform where teachers could request and design their own lesson modules. We made users part of the product. And slowly, EdTech's hype wore off. Their platform was fast but shallow. Ours was deeper, smarter, and actually helped. By the end of year 4, we passed 150,000 users. We were profitable. Then came the acquisition offer. A multinational EdTech giant offered $94 million to acquire NextMind entirely. I was 29 years old. They wanted full ownership. They'd integrate our team into their massive machine, rewrite parts of the code, and possibly sunset features that weren't scalable. It was a golden exit, and I said no. I remember the stunned silence in our boardroom. One investor even got up and left the room in disbelief. But Evelyn? She smiled. "You've stopped chasing money," she said. "Now you're chasing meaning." I knew that if we sold, the soul of NextMind would evaporate. So instead, we raised our Series B, $30 million at a $120 million valuation. We hired top talent. We expanded into Canada, the UK, and Southeast Asia, and I stayed in the same rented apartment. still rode the subway, still coded when I needed to think. Because I hadn't built NextMind to get rich. I built it so kids like Elijah wouldn't grow up thinking they were stupid. I became the face of underdog tech. Journalists loved the rags to riches arc. Former warehouse worker now runs global EdTech empire. Every podcast wanted to talk about grit, hustle, and my jacket story. But none of them really captured the truth. It wasn't just hard work. It was grace. The grace Evelyn gave me. The grace I tried to give others. The grace of understanding that success isn't built on perfection. It's built on recovery. 5 years after the bus stop, I found myself invited to speak at a global education summit in Switzerland. My keynote was scheduled right after Evelyn's. Hadn't seen her in over 6 months. She'd retired from Helix and moved to Portugal to write a memoir. When I stepped onto the stage, the applause was deafening. But I didn't feel like a star. I felt like a student who had finally earned their teacher's approval. That night, over dinner, Evelyn and I sat watching the snow fall outside. "Do you regret it?" I asked. "Which part?" Stopping to talk. To a stranger at a bus stop. She smiled. "You didn't just offer me a jacket, Rayhan. You offered me hope that the next generation of founders might just bring back humanity." I paused. And then she said something I'll never forget. "You don't owe me anything, but you owe someone else the same opportunity I gave you." That night, the Catalyst Fund was born in my mind. When I launched the Catalyst Fund, I wasn't trying to be a philanthropist. I was trying to be a mirror. I wanted to reflect the grace that had once been shown to me, to identify fire where the world only saw smoke, to believe in someone before the world did, just like Evelyn believed in me. The fund started small, a $5 million initiative carved out of my personal equity in NextMind. No giant announcements, no big press release. Just an open form on our site for underrepresented founders with ideas rooted in impact, not just profit. In the first month, we got 2,300 applications, ideas from Lagos to Lahore, from climate education platforms to rural internet solutions powered by solar kits. Most of them would never see a VC boardroom. Not because they weren't brilliant, but because they didn't look the part. Just like I didn't, once upon a time. I still ran NextMind, but the company didn't need me the same way anymore. We had a strong executive team. Our user base had passed 500,000 students worldwide. We just secured a partnership with the UN's education arm to expand digital classrooms across underserved regions in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. I started working more in the background, guiding culture, mentoring leaders, refining our long-term vision. But more and more, my heart was drawn to the Catalyst Fund. There, I wasn't the CEO. I was the connector. I sat across from 22-year-old inventors and 30-something activists with zero pitch experience but infinite potential. And every time I recognized that raw, nervous energy in their eyes, I saw myself. One of our first grantees was a young woman named Lena from Jordan. She built an app that translated sign language into real-time speech using just a smartphone camera. She pitched barefoot during our virtual call. Her home flooded the night before and still blew me away. We invested in her. Today, her app is used in 14 countries and is being piloted in public schools across Europe. Another was a group of engineering students from Kenya who created a $12 water purifier for slum communities using recycled bike parts. They had no formal pitch, just a live demo, a PowerPoint with typos, and a dream to save lives. They're now in talks with WHO for a full-scale rollout. And all this reminded me of the thing I nearly forgot in the chaos of scaling a company. Real. Innovation isn't flashy. It's faithful. It's not always fundable in PowerPoint form. Sometimes it's hidden in a basement, in a community hall, at a bus stop. That's why I still return to the same one. The corner of 6th and Monroe. The bus stop where everything began. Sometimes I go there late at night, hoodie on, standing alone, watching, remembering. And one December evening, cold, quiet, with snow lazily drifting down, I noticed a young man huddled on the bench. Thin, jacket, blue fingers, same look in his eyes I must have had years ago. Not quite hopeless, but definitely bruised by life. I walked up. "You okay?" I asked. He looked startled, then nodded. "Just waiting on the 9. It's late." I pulled off my coat. "Here, take this." He blinked. "No, I can't." "You can," I said, smiling. "I had someone do the same for me once." He hesitated, then slowly took it. "Thanks." I didn't tell him my name, didn't hand him a business card, didn't pull out my phone to record it for social media. I just sat beside him until the bus came, and when it did, I got on too, though it wasn't my route. Because sometimes the best way to remember where you're going is to revisit where you started. 6 months later, I was invited to deliver the commencement speech at my old high school in Baymore. The auditorium hadn't changed much, still smelled like floor polish and chalk. But this time, I wasn't sitting in the 3rd row, worried about test scores. I was standing on stage, holding a mic, facing rows of young faces hungry for what came next. I told them the truth. Not just the polished version, the real one. About sleeping on chairs in startup offices. About taking buses instead of flights. About being underestimated so many times that I started keeping a mental tally like it was fuel. Then I said, "Your value is not determined by how the world sees you, but by how you respond when the world doesn't see you at all." I got a standing ovation. But it wasn't the applause that moved me. It was the one kid, skinny, quiet, sitting alone in the back row, who walked up after, notebook in hand, and said, "Can I show you something I've built?" The older I got, the more I understood. Something Evelyn once said to me over coffee: "Success isn't a finish line, it's a baton." Every venture, every platform, every dollar meant nothing unless I passed it forward. So that's what I do now. I mentor quietly. I invest selectively. I speak honestly. I say no more often than yes, but when I say yes, it's with full conviction. And next mind. We reached 1 million users by year 7. We've been translated into 19 languages. We now power adaptive learning. In refugee camps, rural villages, and inner-city schools alike. But the part I'm proudest of? We've never charged a single cent to the students themselves. We found a way, through partnerships, grants, and public funding, to keep education truly accessible, because I never wanted a kid like Elijah, or me, to be locked out of the future, just because their parents couldn't afford it. Evelyn passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 years after retiring. She left me a letter, handwritten. Ink slightly smudged in the corner like she'd paused while writing, maybe smiling. It said, "Rayhan, you were never just a mentee. You were a mirror for my younger self. I only showed you what was already in you. Pass it on, and when you feel the world getting too loud, go back to the bus stop." That letter now hangs framed in my home office, right next to the very jacket I gave her. She had it cleaned, stitched, and returned years ago, with a note tucked in the pocket. Still warm, just like your heart. I'm 35 now. People call me a billionaire, a visionary, a tech icon. But I still flinch at those titles. I'm just a kid from Baymore. A kid who made enough mistakes to know that the climb isn't what defines you. It's what you carry up the mountain and who you choose to pull up with you. Sometimes it's easy to forget how fragile the journey is. How one moment, one decision, one act of kindness can ripple out into eternity. That's why I keep walking, keep listening, keep giving my coat away when I see someone shivering. Because maybe, just maybe, the next world-changing founder is out there right now, cold, invisible, waiting for a bus, and I refuse to let them wait alone.